Welcome to Dear Business Coach, the podcast. My name's Elizabeth. Find one thing to move your business forward today with conversations, spotlights, interviews, articles, and free resources. Listen and follow and subscribe on social media. Dear Business Coach pages and groups. Dear Business Coach podcast. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and don't forget Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, anywhere you listen to podcasts. All it takes sometimes is one little thing to move your business forward today. Here on StreamYard. Whoops. Okay, so it took me a second to figure that out and get on here. All right, my name's Elizabeth, and I am the producer and host of the Dear Business Coach podcast, and bringing to you today a live session on LinkedIn here. And I'll go ahead and reshare this event to your page, to your network. You never know who would like to jump in here and listen to this free resource. This is a free live session. And actually, this is the only place right now where these live sessions are broadcast is on LinkedIn. So I am playing around with how to release these in other places. And some of this content will become paid content. So right now it's still free. And thank you so much for being here today because I would love to share with you all about your podcasting process. And that is what the event is called today. So, these events are, as I said, only available here on LinkedIn as of now during these live sessions. If you want to listen to replays, you can access those on my profile page in the events tab. And so that is where you can sift through topics if you'd like to listen to the replay. And go ahead and subscribe to my email list. And you can do that on the LinkedIn page right here, too. If you just navigate to my profile page and under my LinkedIn headline detail is the live link that says get email now. And so let's see, what does it actually say? You can change your headline. You can change what your active link says there. It says subscribe to mail for events. Okay, that's important because coming up this coming Sunday, March 16th, I will be speaking at the QED Theater, the QED Astoria, excuse me, in Astoria, New York. That's in Queens, New York City. And you can get tickets to my talk, to my workshop, by being an email subscriber. So you can navigate over to the QED Astoria website and sign up and get to your tickets right there. Tickets are $14 and it's Sunday at 12 noon, and that's at the QED Astoria in Queens, New York City. And so that talk is podcasting for young women leaders who speak. It'll be an hour long at 12 noon. And while I'm here, let's go ahead and give you the details on the venue because I like to talk about the venue since personally, when I go to a workshop or an event, I do care about where I'm going to be sitting, what is the atmosphere, will there be refreshments, what am I in for, what do I need to bring with me or not, okay, and what am I going to expect. And that helps me feel like when I get to the event, I'm relaxed and ready to pay attention and be involved. Okay. So the QED Astoria is located at 27-16 23rd Avenue, Astoria, New York, zip code 11105. And I'm reading this directly from QEDAstoria.com. So again, this is the theater. It's a small venue in Astoria, Queens, New York City, and the theater is individually owned and maintained, and it's a famous spot for comedy lineups, and as well as they have workshops. And the one that I'm producing and teaching again is podcasting for young women leaders. So that's coming up on March 16th, Sunday, 12 noon. You can get your tickets at the venue site or become an email subscriber with me, which is free to become an email subscriber. These resources are free. I curate these resources, put them in the email for you each week, and so that's a good reason to sign up and get your email address listed with my mailing list, because you'll actually get this direct venue link and the details on the event in your email box. If you already are an email subscriber, you have it. I sent that out yesterday, and there will be another one going out this week. So who is the QED Astoria Theater? What is the QED Astoria Theater? Well, what am I saying actually? QED is literally a I'm reading this from a Google search. QED is an initialism of the Latin phrase quod erat demonstratum, meaning that which was to be demonstrated. Literally, it states what was to be shown. So the QED Astoria is a theater, and it's called the QED Astoria, based off of that Latin initialism. And QED is the only woman owned and operated independent art space in Queens, which was also voted #1 comedy venue in all of New York City by readers of Time Out New York, founded in 2014 by author Cambry Cruz, and currently owned by comedian Hannah Lieberman. QED hosts comedy shows with performers ranging from the beginner to the very famous. We also have arts and writing workshops and meetups, storytelling, movie screenings, watch parties, and everything in between. Our affordable classes and shows are as diverse as Queens itself. With more than 100 events a month, there's something for everyone. Join our newsletter for awesome stuff. So QED also has their own newsletter, and I am subscribed to their newsletter. So if you want to subscribe there, that's a great one to have too. So QED, and before I move on, let me remember to tell you as well, if you heard me read this bio, this little write up about the QED Astoria. Cambry Cruz was the founder, and she was the person that I worked with last year in November when I did this workshop at the QED last year, November 2024. So I had the pleasure of meeting Cambry and interviewing her. And Cambry's interview is on the Dear Business Coach podcast. Are you a LinkedIn user? If you are, you can join me for LinkedIn Live Audio with Elizabeth every week, usually on Mondays at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. I will have a LinkedIn Live Audio where we talk about podcasting for executives who speak and podcasting for team leaders who speak. These are the themes that are currently running. If that sounds like something you're interested, visit me, Elizabeth Walker at Work, on my LinkedIn profile. And you can find that anywhere you stream podcasts on YouTube. And this is the Dear Business Coach podcast. And you can search Cambry Cruz. Her episode is on the podcast. So next, I'm going to be at the QED here this coming Sunday, and I'll have a chance to meet the new owner, Hannah Lieberman. All right, so today's talk is your podcasting process. Let me go back to the event and actually look at what we said here today. So, what do I have in my notes? Your podcasting process, live audio with Elizabeth. What did I say here? I said, getting ready for NYC. Join this class to learn the essentials of podcasting as a leader who speaks in your field. We are covering both podcast guesting and hosting. Build your resume, profile, and presence right away. Set yourself apart as a leader and speaker in your field or market. Create meaningful connections with potential mentors and collaborators. Bring your laptop or tablet and phone, and this is with producer and host Elizabeth Walker. Dear Business Coach podcast, Walker Consulting workshops. And so that is the write up for today's LinkedIn Live, what you're listening to. It's 8:42 a.m. Eastern Time. Let me take a sip of coffee here. Also, don't forget about comments. If you comment on this event now when you're listening to it, and make sure you tag me at Elizabeth. That way, later today, if you commented and I didn't see it pop up right here on my screen right now, then I can always connect with you after the fact. So, why would you want to comment on an event like this? Number one, other people who are watching and listening will see your comment and your name and your profile. And I like to go to the comments and look at who else is interested in the topics and events that I am. And I will often use that comment section in an event that I'm at, like this one online, to collaborate, to network, right? So hopefully those networking efforts, connecting with people here on LinkedIn, for example, will actually lead to collaborations. So one of the things about participating in this live audio is you can share it and comment. And that way you are sharing your name and your profile, showing you're interested in being a speaker in your field and being around the creation of speaking events and podcasting. What if you've been to my LinkedIn Live audios before, you know that I base the talk on a short structure, a basic structure of a one page of notes. And in that one page of notes, I like to suggest drawing three big boxes. And actually, your boxes will take up the whole page. And you're only going to use one side. I only like to use one side. So the goal here is not to make a script, it's to create a physical tool so that when you are on your podcast interview with recording, whether you are the guest or whether we are the host, you have this as a physical tool to help you remember a couple of things that are important that make the podcast memorable, like a short story or some specific interesting data that you'd like to share with your audience. And these are two of the some of the most compelling factors to build into an interview or a talk: storytelling and data. I recently listened to a talk about this where someone was breaking down the things. Oh, I know what it was. It was No Stupid Questions. That's a podcast I like to listen to. And in one of these episodes on No Stupid Questions, they were discussing why are stories memorable, and why do they make us, why do we remember stories and not figures or facts, even though there are plenty of us here today who require and appreciate and need facts and figures in order to buy in, right, to what we're being presented. So that's important. Data is important. Data, however, tomato tomato, but stories too. So in our one page of notes, you can make three big boxes, and I'll shorten the lecture on how to structure the notes today, since I am focusing on kind of advertising the event coming up on Sunday. But just a recap here. So on our one page of notes, I like to put my call to action in the first big view. And hopefully I remember to do that again at the end of the interview. So these are actually things I'm working on for myself too, every episode that I record. Also, if you have a podcast, I want to hear from you. If you would be open to letting me practice being a guest on your podcast, I'm putting together a new one pager to send out to folks about being a guest on a podcast, because I need practice there too. So, what your podcasting process, in the title of today's LinkedIn Live, your podcasting process. what I brought for you today on my notes were to share some things I thought would be helpful. And again, I'm practicing this talk for this coming Sunday. So I have only a few minutes here on the LinkedIn Lives. Sunday's talk at the Theater QED Astoria is 14 bucks and it's 1 hour long. And we'll expand on some of these topics. If you'd like, you can look back through the last 2 or 3 LinkedIn Live sessions to get a feel for where I'm pulling in my pulling information together from for the the in-person talk at the theater. So I said that you want to join today's session to learn the essentials of podcasting as a leader who speaks in your field. So, one of the notes I wrote down here is I wanted to tell you that I think it's important thinking about your content for your podcast and your process. What is it that you are personally interested in about being on a podcast or hosting a podcast? And the reason why I ask you this question is because it's important to remember, I think, this question for yourself fundamentally at every step. So even when we're building our process from the invite or from the calendar appointment to the recording to the follow up to the distribution of your podcast episode, it's important to remember why you're interested in doing it and what are we interested in it for ourselves. And this way, we hopefully will keep things as simple as possible for ourselves. So, for example, if you are struggling with creating invites and struggling with how to connect with people to bring them to your podcast or to get onto a podcast, why are we interested in talking to people? So let's say I look at my contact list in LinkedIn, for example. Let me go down the list here. I have done this before where I look at my contact list and I think, oh, you know what? I've been thinking about talking to that person because I was interested in asking about a book they wrote, or I'm interested in asking them about a project they're working on, a talk that they are advertising, or let's say you have a colleague and you know that they have a class that they're teaching. Maybe you have a colleague who is a professional, but they are working on a personal project outside of work and they want to share a story or bring some attention to a project they're working on. Excuse me 1 minute. Okay, I just muted my mic here on StreamYard, so I do hope that that worked because I had to cough. So let's see. Okay, so when I say in the description to think about to learn the essentials of podcasting, part of this your process of podcasting is starting with how to invite people or starting with how to get yourself invited. And so one of the things that I wrote down, excuse me, on my page of notes today as one of my bullet points was Tuesday. I think it's interesting to share with the person that you are reaching out to. Why are you interested? Maybe not why you think the audience would love you, and especially if you're starting out. I still struggle with this. I talk to people on my podcast who ask me or talk to me about what the audience might want to hear about during the interview. And honestly, I have to concentrate on what I'm interested in, right? So when I'm listening to an interview, when I'm talking to you during an interview, I want to know about you and I want to ask you questions about your work. And I have to remember, why am I interested in speaking to this person? Because that's how the questions will come out in a genuine fashion. It's also how I keep the conversation going in a natural of a way as possible. Because if you notice on the Dear Business Coach podcast, I end up going on a tangent with people sometimes, and that is sometimes the fun part of the interview because we talk about something maybe we didn't plan for. So Why are you interested in talking to this person, whether you're the guest or the host? And just one or two questions that are specific to your personal interests, not worrying about, do I think an audience would be interested? But what is it that you wanted to ask this person? Or what is it that you wanted to share with this person? Okay. So building your resume and profile and presence right away. This is true. As soon as we get on a podcast, in my opinion, this is an evergreen type of resource. So I can post a podcast interview on my LinkedIn page. I can post a podcast interview on my website. I can post a podcast interview on my Spotify playlist. That's actually something I haven't talked about in a long time. If you are and by the way, I heard this tip and secret from Angela Duncan. She's of all of many things. She has her own podcast, and I would call her a real estate investor and a real estate investing expert. Specifically, she talks to women about financial security, financial building. Angela was on my podcast as one of my very early guests. I would even venture to say that Angela took a risk by being on my podcast and really gave me her time generously because, she actually was on the podcast circuit talking to much bigger and more important people than me. So, Angela Duncan, if you hear this recording, thank you so much for coming on my podcast. And one of the things that you had said to me about podcasting had to do with how important of a platform it is for you to share your business and make yourself available to other experts in the industry, and immediately this is a presence builder for you. So you can put content on your own playlist. I'm sorry, I almost lost track. This is what Angela said one time to me that I picked up and forgot to put in my notes for you all, is if you have a Spotify playlist, for example, and I know there are SoundCloud. I'm using SoundCloud now these days, actually, more than actually I'm using SoundCloud primarily. Any of these media players that you use to play music and podcasts, you can create your own playlist, right? This is a free personal feature for individual users, and you can make your playlist available to your friends, right? You can make public your playlist if you want to, or simply share the link to your playlist. So one of the things that Angela said that I am remembering now finally to bring back to the tip list here is, anytime you have a podcast interview that you want to include in your portfolio and make visible, this is how we're building our resume and our profile and our presence right away. Just putting a recording of your podcast interview somewhere on your page so that I can see it. So I would be interested to look at your profile and just take a look. Oh, she's interested in podcasting. I have a friend, a colleague, Normia Vasquez Scales, and you've heard me talk about her here. She is one of my colleagues on the podcast. She's actually coming up again on the podcast. I've already recorded with her, and that episode will be out in a few weeks. She's talking about her rags to runway business, and she's a communications expert where she has talked to C-suite executives about communication, specifically helping folks across who speak or who are non-native English speakers in the corporate world, in the C-suite executive positions. So, but she also likes to help folks who are interested in dressing to impress. And so she has a business segment called Rags to Runway, and this is where she dresses people up for interviews, talks about how to complement our body styles and how to stand out and use color. She's really also very easy to listen to. She's a poet, so when she speaks, she also has this beautiful voice, and that episode's coming up. Anyway, Normia Vasquez Scales, for example, I'm using her as an example. You can look her up on LinkedIn here. She's actually kind of quiet on social media, relatively speaking, I would say. However, when you go to Normia's LinkedIn page, one of the first things you see is a podcast interview that she recorded in a studio. And, that she got some lovely photography out of that. She put that up on her LinkedIn page as a featured section, left it there ever since that recording was released. And it's beautiful and it makes a wonderful impression on her LinkedIn page. So, this is what I mean by taking advantage of podcasting and using your recordings, whether you're a guest or a host, to instantly build your resume profile and presence as soon as you have any kind of, any kind of recording. You can pull it from YouTube, you can pull it from your own private library. It could be a private recording that's not yet on a podcast stream. So having a quote episode available to share with your network and your audience may not necessarily mean that you are streaming it professionally. Does that make sense? Okay, let's see. Yeah, and I did say I would like to hear your process. So, what is your podcasting process if you have started a podcast or have been in the game for a little while? How do you think about your process? I'd love to bring you on the podcast and interview you about how you look at your process as a podcaster or as a person engaging as a podcast guest. So, part of the process, right, is scheduling and how are we recording. So I'll get, if you've been to a LinkedIn live audio with me before, you also know that I'm a big proponent of free resources. So of course sometimes we want to or feel inclined to spend a couple of dollars on uh a tool or maybe a microphone, and that's fine. I have a microphone, and I also just use my cell phone a lot. So those are personal preferences. Whatever gets you to the interview. So free is great because it's one less barrier. We want to concentrate on, I think, getting to the recording and to the interview. So, step one is inviting someone or getting yourself invited to an interview. Personally, as the producer of the Dear Business Coach podcast, I do control the scheduling and I do control where we meet and how the recording happens. So, I like to use my Google Calendar. I might message somebody on LinkedIn, for example. I might message you and say, hey, I was checking out your profile today. Have you thought about being on a podcast? Even if you've been on a podcast before, I might ask you that and just say, I would love to bring you on the show. Would you like to have a meet and greet? And that is my process for inviting someone to a podcast. And then also the follow up there in that invite is wait for a response. So I know it's 9 o'clock. That means it's time to go. And my name's Elizabeth, and producer and host of the Dear Business Coach podcast. And this is today was your podcasting process linked live audio with Elizabeth. So I would love for you to subscribe to my email, please. And that way you can get all of the freebies. Today we didn't even talk about the magazine. There's a new magazine out today or this week. So make sure you peruse that. That includes 6 episodes of Dear Business Coach podcast interviews, plus artwork and an editor's letter from me, plus some opportunities in there if you're an artist, an ad to submit your artwork. Let's see here. Yeah, so dearbusinesscoachpodcast.com or right here on my LinkedIn profile, subscribe to email so you can get the hookup to the link to the QED Astoria Theater and buy your ticket. It's $14 this Sunday in Astoria, Queens, New York City at the QED Astoria Theater. And that's free to sign up for the email list, and your registration link is in that email. All right, it's time to go. You are superstars. And I hope you have a fantastic week. Thank you for coming today. Talk to you soon and see you at the QED. Hey, listeners, don't forget to subscribe to email if you haven't already. Do this at dearbusinesscoachpodcast.com. And if you are a new subscriber, look for the magazine coming up. You can get a free download as a new subscriber. That's dearbusinesscoachpodcast.com. Thanks so much, and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Remember, you are a superstar.